Hello everyone, today we're going to review Eileen. I'm going to tell you my thoughts and opinions, and I have some notes here that I'm going to look at throughout the video, but overall this is going to be my opinion, only mine. I think this is going to be the first book review that I post here on YouTube, but I have posted book reviews on Instagram before that I have to start uploading here, but that's for another day. And this is how I want to start it as. And what better way to start it than read a passage from the end of the first chapter that tells you exactly what the book is about. And this is from Eileen's words, exactly. So here we are. My name is Eileen Dunlop. Now you know me. I was 24 years old and had a job that paid $57 a week as a kind of secretary at a private juvenile correctional facility for teenage boys. I think of it now as what it really was. For all intents and purposes, a prison for children. I will call it Moorhead. Delvin Moorhead was a terrible landlord. I had years later, and so to use his name for such a place feels appropriate. In a week, I would run away from home and never go back. This is the story of how I disappeared. So, Eileen is the debut novel of Ottessa Moshfegh. The story is set in the 60s, and our narrator is the main character, Eileen. The whole story evolves around a week before she leaves town. The week is an approximate week in my opinion, because she can be an unreliable narrator at times, and she lives in a town in Massachusetts. She never tells us the name of the town. All she does is call it Exville. That's how, if you want to read the book, that's how she's going to refer to it every single time. We never know which town she's from. Her mother died when she was 19. Her older sister leaves the house, and now she's stuck with her father, who used to be an ex-cop, now a full-time alcoholic, and he basically controls the majority of her life, and she turns into his caretaker, basically. Oh yeah, did I also mention that he attends church every Sunday, even though he's an alcoholic prick? Yeah. Now, back to Eileen's job. So, Eileen works at a correctional facility for young boys. And throughout the book, because her job as an assistant is to file documents, write up reports, and she's in charge of the meetings. So when the parents come and meet the boys, there is something that caught my attention, because look at this. I'll share an example from a random page before I get into it. I used a pencil to do my annotations because this is not my book, this is my friend's book. And of course I put stickers, sticky notes, whatever, to make it easier for me to find them, because pencils are not that visible, so I thought this would be easier. Yes, and because she meets the boy's parents as well, the parents is actually always the mother. That's what Eileen says. And she's like, maybe the boys turned out to be this way because they don't have a father figure in their life. Well, Eileen, look at the way you turned out. You have a father figure, but look at the way you turned out. Eileen is not a perfect character. I just want to make that known. If you are looking for a redeemable character, a character that's gonna work hard on herself, who's going to go to therapy, make herself a better person, get a different job that she likes, or just get one that pays better, she's not gonna do that. Eileen is not the hero that you're looking for. She's just a girl that unfortunately was raised by alcoholic parents who never cared for her. Her mother, a selfish woman, literally left her at the end of the stairs when she tripped and fell and hurt her knee. She was a child when this happened, by the way. And her mother just looked at her, gave her the evil eye, and left her there alone. A kid. Eileen was a kid. Her father, a perverted creep who made sexual comments about her when she was just a kid. But in the book, she's like, I should consider myself lucky because other girls get groped, but I'm only getting poked at. Yeah. I want to say that this was the first book that I read about female character that's like described as a self-deprecating character. And I know a lot of the reviews said that they didn't like this sort of character, but what I got from those reviews was that they had read a lot of books like that and they were just sick of it. I guess they just wanted a book where the female character is strong, you know, she wants to be a better person, she wants to achieve many things. But for me, because this was the first one where like the female character specifically, she was a bit crazy, nasty, self-loathing, I was like, I don't mind it. It was actually an interesting experience. If you want to call it that. So it didn't bother me. And what is what I'm trying to say. Maybe if I kept reading books like this, then yes, I'd have a problem with it. But it was the first book and it really didn't bother me. A unique thing that I found about Eileen, because this is in a series of like, Eileen is telling her life, like how she escaped from this town, the week before she escaped town. And one of the things that she mentions is that, well, even throughout the book, she barely eats. She's described as someone who's 100 pounds, and in kilograms, that's 45 kilograms. 45 kilograms. Anyways, also Eileen is 24. Same as like when she escaped town, I'm also 24, which is kind of crazy. And at times, like I could relate to Eileen and I was like, oh my God, am I crazy as well? Like, am I crazy as well? But no, because Eileen and I are two completely different people actually. And yeah, when she described her eating habits, Eileen smoked a lot. No, wait, she didn't smoke. She smoked occasionally. She drank alcohol. She drank so much alcohol all the damn time. She chews chocolate, she eats it, but she spits it out. She doesn't swallow it. She eats peanuts, occasionally a sandwich. I think throughout the whole story, she said that she ate 2 sandwiches in her life, something like that. But yeah, and in the part that I want to get to is that, you know, older Eileen, she says that it took me years to start feeding myself proper food and to actually fall in love with food. Not fall in love, but just the process of eating it and actually enjoying food. And that all happens because she's currently dating this, like, I don't know, random dude. And he's like, you know, those foodies, they love the different cuisines. And he's like, I'm going to feed you, girl. I'm going to feed you. But it didn't turn out to be a good relationship. Nothing happened really between them. And I'm just going to look at some notes. So what makes this book so special is Ottessa's writing, in my opinion. This book is special, and I think it did so well because of Ottessa's writing. She made this possible. It's the constant turmoil that follows Eileen's spirit, her wish to disappear, gain a new identity and live a different life, a new life away from Exville, her contradictions about love and the boys at Moorhead, her perverted thoughts about the miners, and the most handsome guard in Moorhead, Randy. I don't know, I don't like Randy. And the way she describes his body, and the way she talks, and the way she stalks him every Sunday. So she had this routine basically. She would drive around the coast because she loved the coast. Also, the way she explained it is that her car had like a broken exhaust pipe, and she would have to like roll the windows down in a -degree temperature so she wouldn't get poisoned from the freaking air that was coming out of the pipes. Also, her reasoning for not fixing it is because it was too much work. It was too much work to fix the broken pipes. And how she didn't get pneumonia is a wonder of mine. Of course, Ottessa chose to not give her pneumonia. We all know that. But if it was me, I wouldn't have just gotten pneumonia. I would have died from it a long time ago. But thank God I'm not Eileen. Hopefully I'm never Eileen. Not in this life and not in any other life that I live. I don't even want to get born again. Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. So Eileen doesn't want to get better. That's just my opinion. I don't think Eileen wants to get better. I don't think she wants to change everything about herself. And the more the story progresses, the more she succumbs to evil sins. Well, all sins are evil. And illegal activities. That's all she does. Like, the story just keeps getting crazier and crazier. And for a woman who's like repulsed by sexual activity, she is kind of weird about it as well. But I also understand. I understand why she would turn out the way she did. At one point, while she's driving on the highway, and you know how at highways there are like places where you can stop, she watches a couple make out, and this is her reaction after she watched the couple make out. So this is her reaction after she started feeling sexual desires, let's say. So I opened the car door and leaned out and scooped up a fistful of crystalline snow and stuffed it down the front of my trousers and into my underpants. That's page 81. Let's go there for a second. Let me read you the whole thing if I can find it. Sexual excitement nearly always made me feel sick. At home, I could have taken a scalding bath, washed vigorously, but I was far from home. So I opened the car door and leaned out and scooped up a fistful of crystalline snow and snuffed it down the front of my trousers and into my underpants. It was very cold and very painful, but I left it there to melt as I drove. I rolled down the windows, as always, and how I didn't catch pneumonia is beyond me. It's beyond me as well, Eileen. Yeah. But because we're still on Eileen, because I still haven't gotten like to all the parts here, I'm gonna read you a part of the interview that Ottessa Moshfegh had with the New Yorker. In an interview with the New Yorker, Moshfegh intended readers to experience her protagonist as more self-loathing than repellent. Eileen is unique in the way that she describes herself. Well, this is my opinion. Eileen is unique in the way that she describes herself. How much she hates her body, which in my opinion is her right, because this is her book. If you do give this book a chance, or if you're looking at the reviews and trying to make sense of it, this is how I would describe the book. Broken homes give birth to broken souls. Some people are lucky enough, they find a way, they find a will, and they move on with their lives and things get better. But some succumb to self-sabotage and resort to self-harm in some situations, unfortunately, because they don't know any better, or they haven't seen any better, or anything that's fairly normal. So the way that Eileen is and what she goes through and what she does, in my opinion, is very realistic to her character. So let's get more into the book. A favorite part that I quoted even on my blog that's gonna be up. You can find the link in the description box. She said something about men that it made me laugh so hard. So Eileen hates a lot of things. Eggsville, her job, the people there, her father, but the one thing that she hates the most: men with happy She hates men with happy childhoods. I died at this part. Look at this. There's nothing I detest more than men with happy childhoods. Okay, so something about Eileen is that she loves National Geographic. She's subscribed to it because back then in the 60s they would get like I think people still do that now. She'd get like a monthly magazine, and she loves death. She doesn't want to die. She said multiple times that she doesn't want to die, but she loves death. And specifically in that magazine, or when she'd go to the public library, she'd read about death. She would read about the death rituals and how people are buried in different cultures. You know, her whole thing is that she's a self-deprecating character and she just rejoices in the grotesque. Eileen is obsessed with her body. She always talks about her weight, what she's eating, how she feels about her body. She picks at her skin. She counts her ribs. And in front of others, she makes sure to at least look a bit appealing, but in secret, she just has nasty habits, like how I mentioned chewing the chocolate and spitting it out after she was done, and then barely eating and surviving on bread, peanuts, and alcohol. Mostly alcohol. Majority of her body, alcohol, in my opinion. The beginning of the book is mostly just Eileen describing her relationship with her father, talking about her body, talking about her job at Moorhead, and just sharing her thoughts and opinions. And this is the very first thing, literally on page 2, that I annotated. In such a state, it seemed ridiculous to call attention to myself. I rarely wore jewelry, never perfume, and I didn't paint my nails. For a while, I did wear a ring with a little ruby in it. It had belonged to my mother. So everything that she owns, she gets from her mother. So her mother passed away at the age of 8 and 19, and she wears her mother's clothes. The only things that she does not use from her mother's is the shoes, thank God, at least the shoes. She also has a problem with shoplifting. So far from what I can remember is that she has stolen chocolates, not shocking, alcohol, I believe, stockings, random clothing items, a magazine, but her favorite thing to do is shoplift. This is how she rebels against the world, as she put it. And she doesn't bother with buying new clothes. She uses her mother's clothes all the time, making herself look more like sort of an old woman and unappealing to the other sex. And that's in her mind, that's what she was trying to achieve, at least. And this is I'm just taking this by order and reading things to you and then commenting on it. This isn't the story of how awful my father was, let me be clear. Bemoaning his cruelty is not the point of this at all. But I do remember that day on the stairs, how he winced when he turned to look up at me, as though the sight of me made him ill. I stood on the landing looking down. And as I mentioned, she has this sort of obsession with her body and death. And I actually loved what she said about it, about her brain and her body. The idea that my brains could be untangled, straightened out, and thus refashioned into a state of peace and sanity was a comforting fantasy. I often felt there was something weird in my brain, a problem so complicated only a lobotomy could solve it. I'd need a whole new mind or a whole new life. Well, you need it, Eileen, because you're weird. You're selfish. All you care about is yourself. You don't care about anything else in this world. I don't think a lobotomy would help Eileen, to be honest. I don't think it would be anything useful to her, in my own personal opinion. Another really cool thing about Eileen is that she tries to make herself seem more distant from the world, not just the people around her, I mean the world. And she calls this her death mask. She puts on this mask to seem indifferent, to seem like she doesn't care, to become a wallflower, if you want to call it that, someone that stays away from people and doesn't draw too much attention. So she puts on this death mask to stay away from these people. And throughout the whole book, you see the word death mask so freaking much. At the same time, she cares a lot about what other people think of her. Because at one point she said, the boys at Moorhead were also young, just children. They frightened me at the time because I felt that they didn't like me, didn't find me attractive. Majority of the boys at Moorhead not the majority, all of them, because this is for juveniles. They were all minors. Just warning you. This bitch is crazy. She says a lot of crazy stuff. Oh yeah, and there's also a part where she's like, I wore lipstick not to be fashionable, but because my bare lips were the same color as my nipples. Like, why? Why would you say that? And described her writing as a schoolgirl cursive. And I believe when he writes something, she also calls it schoolgirl cursive. It's like, how I would put this as Eileen is that she wants to grow up, she wants to get out of Exville, she wants to become a different person. But realistically, Eileen didn't get to be a child. At least she didn't get a normal childhood. Even when she tried to be, her parents wouldn't allow her to. The circumstances wouldn't allow her to be a normal person. And in that case, it's like she's stuck between being an adult who wants to leave exile and a child who wasn't let to be one. And she has one foot set in adulthood and the other foot set in childhood. And they're not moving. They're just crisscrossing and trying to figure this out. Because not even Eileen knows what she's doing majority of the time. I mean, look at her thoughts. Comparing her lips to her nipples. Please. Please. Unrelated to Eileen. Unrelated to books and anything. At one point in the book, she says, "Oh, those poor nether regions of mine, swaddled like a baby in a diaper in a thick cotton underpants, and my mother's old strangulating girdle." This part. Swaddled like a baby in a diaper. And on another part of the book, she talks something about how a baby's skin is so smooth. And this is not about Ottessa Moshfegh, and this is not about Eileen. It's something that I have observed. A lot of people say, oh, smooth like a baby's butt. Smooth like a baby's skin. Okay, but babies are not the only ones who have smooth skin. Adults do as well. Children do as well. Old people, when they lotion themselves, they also have smooth skin. I know it's to say because, they're newborns and their skin is the best during that time. I don't freaking know. But it's so weird to me and it's so pedophilic. And I'm not blaming the author. I'm not blaming the character because this is in movies. This is in different literary media. People will randomly say this and I'm like, why? Why would you compare something so random to a baby's butt? Smooth as a baby's butt. Please don't. Please don't say that. So disturbing. Do not say that. Say it's smooth as my skin. To show off that you have smooth skin instead. Whatever. Crazy people. Crazy people. This book drove me insane, by the way. Oh, yeah. Adding on to her nasty habits. Goes to the bathroom. She doesn't clean her hands. And watch this. There's another scene later on in the book that I almost started crying when I read it. Crying. I extended still on. Later when the day was done, these were the fingers I extended, still unwashed, to Dr. Fry when I wished him a happy retirement on his way out of the door. Like this, I know this happens in real life as well. And it just, knowing that there are people out there that don't wash their hands kills me. And then there's another part where she's like, she analyzes herself a lot. She analyzes herself so damn much that in page 24, she's like, having to breathe was an embarrassment in itself. This was the kind of girl I was. Can we please just stop paying attention to ourselves so much? I think Fiona Apple said something similar as well. Like, we collectively need to stop paying so much attention to our habits, to what we do, to what we say, to what we engage with. Like, just live in the present and enjoy yourself. Just, like, what do you mean breathe? Don't breathe then. Don't breathe. My God. So mad. And it's in this exact same page where she's like, I stole litter regularly from the drugstore in Exville. I was a fabulous shoplifter, gifted in the fine art of snatching things and squirreling them up my sleeves. My death mask saved me from trouble many times by hiding my ecstasy and terror from clerks and shopkeepers who must have thought I looked very strange in my huge coat, trolling around the candies. Yeah, the coat that her dead mother's. Yeah. So the very first few chapters, I'd say for some time until like 10 chapters in or so, it's only about her. It's about her relationship with her father, her with Exville, the way she analyzes herself, and it's only later on that Rebecca comes into the picture. But we'll get there soon. We'll get to Rebecca because their relationship is crazy. I don't know. This book is considered a sapphic, but don't expect anything romantic. This is not a book about romance. Absolutely not. And remember what I said about that she talks about death and how she wants to die and things like that? This is what she says about heaven and hell. I didn't believe in heaven, but I did believe in hell. And I didn't really want to die. I didn't always want to live, but I wasn't going to kill myself. Because of course, killing yourself is a whole other ordeal. Killing yourself is not that easy. And I actually love that Eileen doesn't kill herself. I love that she doesn't commit suicide. I think it's way more realistic that she lived on. Because a lot of people think that when I stole things, I felt invincible. As though I had punished the world and rewarded myself. Setting things right for once. Justice served. And what do you think she stole? I'll give you 3 seconds. She stole pantyhose. That's what she stole. Yes, justice served with pantyhose. One thing that I do want to mention is that some people thought that this book was a bit repetitive in the sense that it was boring because all we kept reading about was Eileen's thoughts and what she did every day. But I actually, as I said once again, Ottessa made this character a freak. And if you're not a freak, then with some sort of confidence, I can say that people look at freaks like they're not normal, like they're not from this world. And it's either that they want to change people like that, or they just want to stay away from them and analyze them. And in this case, this book was interesting because Eileen is a freak. Eileen is a crazy freak. And she's entertaining. Ottessa made her so entertaining that it was good on my part. Nothing happens, that is true. Nothing really interesting happens until Rebecca shows up. And then Rebecca just, I don't know, Rebecca is crazy as well. Freak as well. But all she does until Rebecca comes around is shoplift, fight with her father, obsess over Randy, talk about the outline of his penis from his tight work clothes, say perverted and pedophilic things about the boys, and talk about what her parents did to her when she was a kid. So if you're expecting some sort of action-packed book, nope, absolutely not. But let me read you a part. Let me read you a part, okay? They were at a party when they were children. Very young, fairly young. I think they were tweens. I think that's, yeah. And her father was joking around with a dude. And he called, so Eileen and her sister Joni, jailbait. I recall what was made to sit next to me at the picnic table, a situation that afforded my father a chance to joke to the boy that Joni and I were jailbait. Disgusting. Disgusting shit. Anyways, this same boy, trigger warning. This whole book is a trigger warning. The boy followed me into the kitchen and tried to kiss me. I refused his advances. I refused his advance by steering my head back and away from his. But he took me by the shoulder and spun me around, gripping my wrist behind my back. "You're under arrest," he joked, and reached his hand up my shorts and pinched me. I ran to the attic where I'd stayed there for the rest of the night. And then later on, a psychoanalyst may term it something like formative trauma. But I know little about psychology and reject the science entirely. People in that profession, I'd say, should be watched very closely. If we were living several hundred years ago, my guess is they'd be all burned as witches. She tends to be funny with the trauma, but this is how people who have a lot of trauma get by making jokes. Oh yeah, nothing happened to this boy. Absolutely nothing happened to this boy. Her parents didn't even check up on her when she went up to the attic. Absolutely nothing. Oh, I forgot to mention. So her, no, I think this comes on later in the book, but since we're on the topic of the attic, let's get to it. Let me set this down. She, ever since her mother died, I believe, from the age of 19 until the age of 24, she sleeps in the attic because, as she explains it, after her mother died, no one cleaned the house anymore. No one took care of the house. So the house is described as dirty, broken down inside. She never cleans, not even the dishes, which is nasty stuff. Nasty. So she lives in the attic and sleeps in a cot. Sleeps in a cot that's run down, can barely hold her 100-pound body, and she sleeps there because she doesn't want to put in the work to clean up the attic and get a mattress. I don't know. And remember when I mentioned that her mother left her at the end of the stairs by herself because her mother is also a psycho? This is how that happened. When I was a child running from my mother, who was chasing me with a wooden spoon and screaming, "Clean your room," or something like that, I split my lip and bumped my head on the way down, scraped my hands and knees when I hit the hard dirt floor. I recall looking up at the yellow rectangle of a light in the kitchen from the foot of the stairs, my mother's silhouette appearing like a paper cutout. She said nothing to me. She simply shut the door. How many hours did I spend down there, hurt and terrified? It was dark and full of dust and cobwebs and a dank, moist smell. Gray steel tools, the boiler, an old-fashioned toilet with a yank hanging from the ceiling that smelled like of old urine, mice. I got over my childhood fear of the dark that day, I suppose. Nothing came at me. No angry spirits attacked me. No restless ghosts tried to suck out my soul. They left me alone down there, which was just as painful. But in general, Eileen doesn't make anything of her life, like what she thinks of it. At one point she says, "I can imagine myself saying at the time that life itself was like a book borrowed from the library, something that did not belong to me and was due to expire." How silly. She says this on page 71. So because her mother is gone now, passed away, her father's still alive, but he's a wacko, he's crazy in his own way. Eileen had to take away all of his shoes and she leaves them in the trunk of her car because anytime he got drunk, which is every day, he would go out, run into the street, harass people, fall asleep in people's yards or porches, go and do crazy stuff, and the police, because he used to be an ex-cop, I guess because of his seniority, I don't know, I don't freaking know, but also they're cops. Cops are useless. They would never arrest him, they never charge him of anything, and they just take him, bring him back home, and be like, "Eileen, this is your fault. Eileen, it's your fault because you're not taking care of your father. Eileen, why are you letting him out of the house?" And it got so bad that she had to take away his shoes, and she only gives her dad his shoes when they go to Sunday Mass and if they ever have to go out to buy something at the market. Yeah, and I think all the alcohol that he drank messed up his brain because, well, the doctor did say to Eileen that if he quits drinking alcohol, he's gonna die. But if he continues, he might live just a bit longer. I don't freaking know. Oh yeah, at one point he aims the gun at children, and then it's so freaking funny because a police officer comes around and tells Eileen, "Yeah, your dad, he pointed a gun at children, so you need to take it away from him." And she's like, "But legally it's his." And they're like, "Okay, but you need to take it." And she's like, "How?" So they go to the house, they take away the gun, and the officer serves as a witness, and he's like, "From now on, this is Eileen Dunlop's gun." And freaking her father is not the owner anymore. absolutely shit. Absolute. On page 80, this is what he says about his wife, his late wife. This is when Aunt Ruth came around. So Eileen's aunt, they don't have a good relationship, but Eileen doesn't have a good relationship with anyone really. This is what her father says. Eileen takes after her mother, my father had replied. Good for nothing. Charlie, don't speak ill of the dead. Don't be such a goody-goody, he snorted. All that woman ever did was spend my money and snore. This is Eileen's thought. It was true. My mother had liked to shop, and she snored so loudly sometimes it sounded like a locomotive chugging through the house. She probably snored like that because she was an alcoholic. Alcohol messes up with your freaking system, man. So Eileen doesn't have a good relationship with her mother, doesn't have a good relationship with her father, not with her Aunt Ruth, not with her sister Joni, no one really. She has no friends to talk to. She has a shit relationship with her coworkers as well, and an absolute shit connection to her body. She had some sort of an eating disorder that's never called an eating disorder because she never goes to see someone. But if you have two eyes and no, because I'm gonna sound ableist if I say that. No, even if you're hard of hearing or hard of or have any other sort of disability, if you can at least understand this text, like you would be able to understand that she has an eating disorder. I'm literally legally blind, so we're kind of on the same page. Whatever. Let's continue before I make this worse. She has an eating disorder. That's all I'll say. I found fruits and vegetables detestable, like eating a bar of soap or a candle. I also suffered from that unfortunate maladjustment to puberty, still at 24, that made me ashamed of my womanliness. There were days on end I ate very little, a handful of nuts or raisins here, a crust of bread there, and for fun, such as with the chocolates a few nights prior, she mentions this a lot. I don't know why she does this. I sometimes chewed but spat out candies or cookies, anything that tasted good, but which I feared would put meat on my bones. Like, Eileen, you're literally made out of nothing. You need something in your bones. You cannot have nothing on your bones, okay? And then on that very same page, there is a part towards the very end of the page, page 88, if you want to follow along. So, and this is about her sexual life. Again, be warned, it's not normal. She's not normal. This book's not normal. The evening of the prom ended in Peter's father's pickup truck. This is about her prom. In the high school parking lot, when I bit the boy's throat to keep him from reaching any further up my dress. But wait, before you jump to conclusions. In fact, I think his hand was barely on my knee. I was so guarded, and the kiss was solely superficial, a momentary touching of the lips, sort of sweet when I think of it now. The problem with Eileen is that she's such an unreliable character that even when she tells us flashbacks, memories of her life, of her past life, of the week before she left freaking Exville, we're not sure as to what happened or how it happened. And this is not the only time when this happens. There are many interactions like this throughout the book where you're like, is Eileen sure about what happened, or is she lying, or does she just not want to tell the truth? I feel like she only tells the truth when it suits her, when it favors her in one way or another. But other than that, she really doesn't share much. And if she does, it's something crazy. Now, the true story, like where things get spicy, if you want to call it that, not spicy in the way that the word is being spicy to refer to as like sexy time. No. Spicy as in it gets exciting. So, I'm going to read you the passage, the paragraph, when Rebecca shows up. And if you watch the movie Eileen, Anne Hathaway plays Rebecca. She's a blonde in that movie. And I don't know, maybe she just didn't think that she would look good as a redhead. I don't know what to say. I don't know. Anne Hathaway looks good in everything, so... But in the book, she's a redhead, and her red hair is talked about a lot throughout the book. This I remember very well. Around 2 o'clock, the warden came into our office, followed by a tall, red-headed woman and a willowy, bald man in a loose, mud-colored suit. My first impression of the woman was that she must be a performer at the special assembly, a singer or an actress with a soft spot for child criminals. My assumption seemed reasonable. Celebrities entertained army troops, after all. Why not young prisoners? Teenage boys were a worthy enough cause. Most of those boys, the ones serving shorter sentences, ended up in Vietnam anyway. I'm sure in any case this woman was beautiful and looked vaguely familiar in the way all beautiful people look familiar. So within 30 seconds, I decided that she must be an idiot. Have a brain like a powder puff, be bereft of any depth or darkness, have no interior life whatsoever. Whatever. Like Doris Day, this woman must live in a charmed world of fluffy pillows and golden sunshine. So of course I hated her. Like I'd never come face to face with someone so beautiful before in my life. So from the get-go, Eileen is like, I love her, but I don't. I hate her, but I don't. I want to be her, or do I want to be with her? Also, I want to share a fun fact. So right here where it says on page 92, celebrities entertained army troops after all. Did you know that the reason that K-pop idols perform for the army is that when Marilyn Monroe visited South Korea, she performed in an army base, and ever since then it's been like a tradition for idols to perform for the troops, Korean troops. It's crazy. I could never, but because I'd feel like a clown, but it's part of the industry, whatever. But yeah, there's always this like pull and push type of relationship between Eileen and Rebecca. At first, it's only Eileen's thoughts, but then Rebecca starts engaging with her, and you're gonna see that push and pull type of tactic, I'd say, as well. This is how she explains Rebecca when the Eileen had to like show her to her locker. Rebecca St. John's face that day had no makeup on it that I could detect, and yet she looked impeccable, fresh-faced, a natural beauty. Her hair was long and thick, the color of brass, coarse, and I noted gratefully in need of a hearty brushing. Her skin was a sort of golden colored, and her face was round and full, with strong cheekbones, a small rosebud mouth, thin eyebrows, and unusually blonde eyelashes. And then she continues on and on and on, talking about how beautiful Rebecca is and comparing her to literally multiple things. And at the same time, yeah, comparing her looks to Rebecca's. While Rebecca was this out of this world gorgeous being, Eileen is not even a duckling. She's not even a stone. She's dirt. She's mud. Eileen is not even close to being called beautiful. In her eyes, not my words. These are just Eileen's words. So the first ever interaction that they have is basically the locker scene where Eileen shows Rebecca the combination and how to open and close the locker, even though later on Rebecca still forgets and makes Eileen open the locker again. I don't know. Also, this book, I've seen that people call it a sapphic. Even the author called it a sapphic story, I believe. And like this blurb right here, this small like synopsis, whatever you want to call it, it gives you the illusion that this is about two girls and their relationship. But it's not. It actually isn't. It's about Eileen and her crazy life, but there is no romance. And I would barely call it a sapphic love story, because they don't do anything. It's just Eileen being obsessed with Rebecca. That's it. So after this like whole locker scene, this is what Eileen says. Perhaps only young women of my same conniving and tragic nature will understand that there could be something in such an exchange as mine with Rebecca that day, which could unite two people in conspiracy. After years of secrecy and shame, In this one moment with her, all of my frustrations were condoned, and my body, my very being was justified. Such solidarity and awe I felt. You'd think I'd never had a friend before. And really, I hadn't. All I had were Susie or Alice or Maribel. Figments, of course. Imaginary girls I'd used in lies to my father, my own dark ghosts. Barely after an interaction. But it's okay because it's Eileen. She's insane. And this whole conversation happens because they start talking about each other's bodies. How Eileen says that, oh, she's skinny, like she doesn't weigh that much. And then Rebecca is like, me neither, I don't weigh much either. But also during this time, like women with like that hourglass shape were very popular. You know, women who had like a bit more on the chest area. And both Rebecca and Eileen are described as like very skinny women who don't have much going on with their bodies. So they bond over that. And then a few pages later on, because I don't know, for Eileen, Rebecca is just a beauty. There's nothing. She's like the Helen of Troy of Massachusetts. So in this part, page 105, she says, how was it that Dr. Morris, Randy, all those boys carried blithely on as though she were invisible to them? Was my assessment of her beauty wrong? Had I lost all perspective? Was I seeing things? Was she not the most radiant, most elegant, most charming woman in the world? I wondered. She continued to scan the audience row by row. They had this like play that the boys were putting on for the staff and I think the local church. And yeah, Rebecca was standing at the front with the boys while Eileen was in charge of the lights. But yeah, and all she could look at was Rebecca. Literally, the whole time staring at Rebecca. I was like, gorgeous, Gorgina, obsessive freak, I guess. A fangirl, if you must. But not that type of fangirl, because I'm a fangirl. We love fangirls. But Eileen is like the crazy type of fangirl that now, if Eileen was doing the things she did in the 60s, now she'd be on TV for freaking stalking, shoplifting, and God knows what else. This is what she says about herself. Again, you're gonna see multiple parts where she talks about herself. She hyper analyzes herself so much that it gets annoying sometimes. But for me, it didn't, because I was like, I kind of shifted my mindset. I tried to look at this book in a more optimistic way. I didn't want this to be boring. So the whole time I was like, what's Eileen gonna say next? What crazy stuff is she gonna come up with next? So here it goes. Or maybe they thought I was crazy. I certainly could have passed for crazy on days when when I'd not slept and showed up unkempt and hung over, rolling my eyes at every noise and gnashing my teeth at every flicker of the light. In my childish self-centeredness, I fantasized that this was what the black boys talked about with their mothers. How much pain Eileen is in, how Eileen seems to need a friend, how Eileen deserves better. I hope they saw right through my death mask, to my sad and fiery soul, though I doubt they saw me at all. And she came to this conclusion after the boys were visiting their parents, and she was like, do they ever think about me? Do they ever think about the fact that I'm a victim? Do they talk about the way that I look? Do they talk about me at all? Like, I don't know, Eileen. This may be your book, but the world is not centered around you. Also, why the mention of black boys? It's like she's trying to put herself in a marginalized group, the only marginalized group in that juvenile corrections facility being the black boys. But you're a white woman, Eileen. I don't know. It's like I have empathy for her, and then she goes and says something even crazier, and I'm like, stop. Please, get help. This is probably going to be the last book, first and last, unless I'm in the mood for it. But this might be the first and last book that I read about a female character that's dirty, nasty, unapologetically herself, and who's not afraid to say crazy stuff and get away with it, because that's what she does. I want to read, this is pretty big actually, but if you don't want to listen to me read this out loud, just go to page 117. Okay, let's start. A grown woman is like a coyote. She can get by on very little. Men are more like house cats. I don't like this comparison because I love cats, and I'd compare men to insects or something. Leave them alone for too long and they'll die of sadness. Over the years, I've grown to love men for this weakness. I've tried to respect them as people full of feelings, fluctuating and beautiful from day to day. I have listened, soothed, wiped the tears away. But as a young woman in exile, I had no idea that other people, men or women, felt things as deeply as I did. Well, guess what, Eileen? You, again, the world does not circle around you, Eileen. I had no compassion for anyone unless his suffering allowed me to indulge in my own. My development was very stunned in this regard. Did I know that the boys at Moorhead, like prisoners around the world, so it seems, might be being pressured by guards to fight one another for sport at night, that they were made to defecate in their pillowcases, routinely forced to strip by the corrections officer who spat on them, beat them up, tied them down, humiliated and abused them. Rumors surfaced, but their implications didn't register. I barely even noticed the boys were handcuffed by the guards when they were escorted to and from the visitation room. Why should my heart ache for anyone but myself? If anyone was trapped and suffering and abused, it was me. I was the only one whose pain was real. Mine. What I loved about this was that somehow at a certain point, multiple times, she could empathize with the boys. But then she's like, what about me? What about me? She's like an incel in this case, some sort of incel. I don't know, Eileen. Go to therapy. Just go to therapy, please. Like, all of her problems could have been prevented if she just went to therapy. I don't know. And remember when I said I don't like it when people compare, I don't know, like physical features or how the skin feels like to a baby's skin, baby's butt, smooth as a baby's butt type of shit. Look at this part. So she's with Rebecca, and Rebecca is smoking, and she offers Eileen one, and because she chokes after smoking, because she's not a smoker, she's an alcoholic. She's like, I don't usually smoke. I said, choking a bit, though I had a pack of Salems in my purse. She rarely smoked, and not the hard ones. Nasty habit, Rebecca said, but that's why I like it. Not very becoming of a lady, though. It turns your teeth yellow. See? And then she leaned forward into me, a finger hooked on her bottom lip, stretching her gums apart to show me the inside of her mouth. See the discoloration? That's coffee, cigarettes, and red wine. Now watch this. But her teeth were perfect, small and white as a paper. Her gums were pink and glossy, okay? And the skin on her face was miraculously smooth, like a baby's. Flawless and radiant and light. We get it. We get it. You can't compare it to anything else but a baby's. Whatever. I came to my favorite part of the book. It's on page 136. So when she talks to this, so Rebecca, she takes an interest in one of the juveniles there. His name is Lee, and he's been put in confinement for, I think, a month now. And he was put there because he was touching himself, so doing things to himself. But because Lee is 14, I'm not going to get into what he was doing. It feels uncomfortable to do so. And Rebecca, Lee's mom comes in to visit him, and Lee has stopped talking ever since he came to the juvenile center. So what Rebecca does is that she starts talking to him. She tries to like make him talk, and she succeeds in doing that. Uh, and at the same time, she has this notebook that she takes notes. So when Lee's mom gets out of the juvenile center, she sits down with Lee. Rebecca sits down with Lee. They start talking, but Eileen is like, "Hey, boys have to visit their families. You need to get out of here." And then Rebecca's like, "Okay, okay." So she sends Lee to her office, but she forgets the notebook. The notebook where she like writes her notes in. And Eileen like takes it and uses it as an excuse to go and see Rebecca, but at the same time she wants to snoop around. She like wants to see what Rebecca has written there, but she can't. Look at this. "Oh, Eileen," she chirped when she opened it. "Are you all right?" I took a step back, feeling like a child, a nuisance. I extended the notebook towards her. She took it and thanked me and said she hoped I hadn't read it. And this is Eileen's response. "Of course I didn't," I told her. "I couldn't have anyway. That chicken scratch was was indecipherable." And I think she says this later on, a second time as well. It's so funny, chicken scratch, my God. And then later on, in that very same page, I turned to leave, but she stopped me by laying a hand on my shoulder. This sent chills down my spine. Nobody had touched me like that in years. I forgave her instantly for betraying me with a boy. I could hear him inside, clearing his throat. So yeah, at first she saw Randy as like a person that might steal Rebecca away from her. And now Lee, a 14-year-old boy. 14-year-old boy. My God, Eileen. Eileen, get alive. Get alive. Now things take a twist around here. So be prepared. Okay. So before Eileen goes to do whatever she needs to do as an assistant, Rebecca is like, "Let's meet today. Let's go out for a drink." And Eileen is like, "Okay, let's go to the only bar that's in town, O'Hara's." And that's where they decide to meet. Now, before the scene starts, trigger warning. Before the scene starts, Eileen tells us a memory that she has of O'Hara's. So she knows O'Hara's because Sandy, the bartender, he's like a very rugged man. He flirts with everyone, a bit of a creep. And when she was a young girl, her father would like send her there to the bar to get drinks, bottles for him. And this is what she says about a particular evening. So this happened on an autumn evening, as she describes it. She was home from college, and this was the weekend. And her mother had sent her to the bar to pick up some stuff for her dad. Now, driving home along the moonlit street, this is with her father. Oh no, she went to pick up her father. This is how it happens. She went to pick up her father at O'Hara's. So driving home along the moonlit streets, he laid his head on my shoulder, told me I was a good girl and that he loved me. A trigger warning. I'm so sorry. That he was sorry that he couldn't be better, that he knew I deserved a real father. It moved me at first, but then his hand went over to my breast. I beat him off easily. "Quit fussing, Joni," he said, slumping back in his seat. I never mentioned it to anyone. Joni is her older sister. And throughout the book, it is mentioned that her father preferred Joni a lot more than he preferred Eileen. He would never give Eileen money except for when she had to go to the store to buy him alcohol, but he would always give Joni money and he'd always take care of her more. So I don't know if this is because nothing more happens. We don't know if he ever did anything to Joni. But is this sort of like a clue that he might have done something to Joni while she was still living at home with her parents? Did Eileen see something? I don't know. But this is all we get. Literally, the next sentence after this is, Before I left Moorhead that day, I finished the vermouth in my locker, and then I drove to the liquor store for more gin and beer for my father and another bottle of vermouth for me. And she talks about how she needed a drink before meeting Rebecca at O'Hara's. So yeah. Her father is a shit show. She's a shit show. The whole town is a shit show. Probably gonna have to bleep myself out, but yeah, that's what we get. But let's move on, because Eileen is funny. Ooh, let's not sit on that. Let me be clear about this. I was not a lesbian, but I was attracted to Rebecca. I yearned for her attention and approval, and I admired her. You could call it a crush. And yeah, then she compares Rebecca to like Marlon Brando, James Dean, Elvis, Marilyn Monroe, because they were famous during the 60s, I believe. And throughout the story, Eileen like makes it perfectly clear that she never wants a child, because it would actually be a nightmare for her to have a child. And at one point, so like way later in life, she reveals that she got pregnant once with this dude, but she aborted the baby because she could never imagine herself as a mother. But at one point, you kind of start losing empathy as a reader for Eileen, and you just start seeing her as a person that you should never be. Don't be like Eileen, please. Don't be like Eileen, please. Now, this I have to mention because it comes into play later on. When she was talking with Rebecca before that whole thing happened, they started talking about Lee, the one that I said that hasn't spoken ever since he came to the juvenile center, the one that Rebecca is trying to make him talk. So Rebecca starts off by saying that the really silent one is that Leonard Polk. You saw him today. And then Rebecca asks again, what did you make of that scene with his mother? Strange, she squinted at me. Don't you think so? I don't know, I began. So this is Eileen. Maybe he stopped talking because he had nothing to say. You know what they say to children. If you can't think of anything nice to say nothing. Then Rebecca is like, they say that to children? By the way, Rebecca is supposed to be this highly educated person. She's from Harvard. Yet she's in the freaking middle of nowhere of Massachusetts. Extremely unrealistic to me. I don't know why she chose to write Rebecca in this way, honestly. I never liked Rebecca. Like, I like Eileen because there's a lot of layers to her. But Rebecca she's just there to fill in the gaps. That's what Rebecca is. I didn't find her character to be anything special. But also because she's not giving any room to be special. She's just there as, I'm not going to spoil right now because we have like 100 more pages to go, but she's just there to fill in some gaps. I don't freaking know. And then this is what Rebecca says about this whole conversation before it ends. About Lee Polk and his relationship to his parents. Some families are so sick, so twisted, the only way out is for someone to die. Because the reason why he's in juvenile prison is because he slit his father's throat. Yeah. But we'll get to that. Don't worry. We'll get to that. Later on around page 170, they make plans to spend Christmas together, I believe. I think it was the day after Christmas Eve or something like that. I don't celebrate Christmas, so I don't really know what the difference between is, even though I was born on the 21st of December. But whatever. I'm not religious, by the way. Anyways, let's move on. So they're about to exchange numbers, and this is the part that caught my attention. She handed me the pen and stuck her arm out for me to write on. I gripped the pale, narrow wrist and wrote my digits up her forearm, on skin so clean and soft and firm. Guess what's coming next? Guess, if you only can. I felt I was defiling something as pristine as a newborn baby. Defiling a newborn baby? The day comes, she goes to Rebecca's house. It's not her house. Dun dun dun. Cause she goes to the house with her freaking Dodge that could probably poison her. Probably poison her. The reason why she's going crazier might be because of those freaking fumes. But whatever. She goes to the house, and it's a house in the middle of nowhere where basically like barely anyone lives, and the house was run down. And when she walks in, it's dirty. There's barely any light bulbs. Oh my god, there's also a disgusting scene. Whatever. I'll tell you guys later. The place is a mess. Dirty. And Eileen is like, but I didn't expect Rebecca to be dirty. Rebecca is perfect. Rebecca cannot be doing this. Just think of it like a few minutes ago when I mentioned that now they took her father's gun, so Eileen is the owner. Well, after a while, she started carrying that gun everywhere with her. And feeling it in her arms and holding it, she'd even sleep with like, she'd put the gun under the pillow and she'd be like, I feel so calm. I feel so serene. It makes me feel so confident in myself. And that is true, actually. Turns out that if you hold a gun in your hands, you feel more powerful and secure within yourself. But that's so crazy. But she mentions a damn gun on page 174. If I or anyone jostled it, the gun inside the purse would clank against the chair's hollow metal backing. What would Rebecca think, I wondered, if she knew I was thus far armed? I had the vague notion that bearing arms was in poor taste. Violence was just another function of the body, no less unusual than sweating or vomiting. It sat on the same shelf as sexual intercourse. The two got mixed up quite often, it seemed. At this point, only her thoughts were violent. Eileen was never a violent person. So I don't know why she's suddenly like, oh, I'm the boss. I'm the boss because I have my father's gun. Also, that gun is old, by the way. It's not even a new model. And on page 188, because I think I mixed up the pages, but who cares? We're going to get there. Don't worry. Remember when I said that she gets verbally and physically, sexually assaulted by her dad? Yeah. Her dad was poking her. Let me just read it. Stale, who cares about stale? He reached over my lap, brushing my thighs, then stuck an elbow hazardly between my knees as he rolled the window back up. I just looked ahead calmly. He had no respect for my comfort or privacy. When I was younger and just beginning to develop, he sometimes sat at the kitchen table at night, drinking with my mother, and called me over to assess my progress, to pinch and measure. Not so good, Eileen, he would say. You've got to try harder. Come on now, Mom would said, laughing. Don't be cruel. And then she said instead, she's too old for you to touch now, Charlie. And clucked her tongue. It could have been much worse, of course. Other girls got robbed and grabbed and violated. I just got poked and ridiculed. Still, it hurt and angered me. It made me lash out later. Fucking madness. It made me lash out later in life when I felt I was being measured and judged. A man I lived with for a time suggested I secretly wished, trigger warning for the 100th time, secretly wished I'd been big-breasted, that I'd felt bad because I'd disappointed my father with my small rack. Every girl wants daddy's hands on her tits. Disgusting. That man had said. What an idiot. He was just a mediocre musician from a wealthy family. I put up with him for a while because I thought maybe he was pointing to some dark truth about myself, and I suppose he was. I was a fool to be with a man like him. I was a fool about men in general. I learned the long way about love. Tried every house on the block before I got it right. Now, I finally live alone. Not only does she rely on men to feel secure, to find some sort of confidence, and, get that male validation, because why the hell would she stay with her father in a run-down house? But she does that with Rebecca as well. At one point, it's what Rebecca thinks, what Rebecca wants. And on page 192, she says, my face in the mirror looked less monstrous than usual. If Rebecca wanted to look at it, maybe it wasn't so bad, I thought. It's amazing what the mind will do when the heart is throbbing. No, I don't think it's about when the heart is throbbing, Eileen. It's about having no self-respect whatsoever. It's about being a crazy bitch. Can you tell by this point that I'm I'm sick and tired of Eileen. I'm tired of her. Also, remember Rebecca's house? This is what she says about supposedly Rebecca's house, because it's actually not her house. Okay. So I smiled, but inside I was disturbed by the dark unruliness of the house, and Rebecca's disregard for decorum, to put it lightly. She paced back and forth for a moment, licking her lips. Something was on her mind, but I didn't dare ask what. At least she looked me in the eyes and frowned. I'm a crummy hostess, she sighed. Don't be silly, I told her. You should see where I live. Now, the ceiling light was a mere bare bulb hanging from a wire. Through the kitchen window, I spied a car covered in snow and another behind it. You know, there were clues everywhere, and I couldn't tell. I literally couldn't tell what was going on. This is connected to Lee, by the way. It's connected to Lee, okay? The boy from the Jewy that doesn't talk because he slit his father's throat. Through the kitchen window, I spied a car, Rebecca's two-door with just dusting off it. It was all very odd. Was this her boyfriend's house? I wondered. Has she shacked up with a local? It was possible, I guessed. Was I disappointed? Surely. But I'd expected Bond china, mahogany, beveled mirrors, damask, soft pillows, velvet, comfort, and decadence. Things from magazines. This was a poor person's house. And more so, a poor person in a bad state. Because it wasn't her house. It wasn't her house. Okay. Remember when I said that there's a nasty part here that absolutely disgusted me? Okay. So, Rebecca is like, Eileen no longer wants to stay in that house because she's like, it's filthy. Like, guess who's talking? Eileen. It's like, the house is filthy. And she's like, I don't want to stay in this house anymore. Rebecca is like, no, please stay. Please stay. Stay, Eileen. I'm so sorry for laughing, but I only have two options when it comes to this scene. Cry and vomit or laugh. And I don't want to vomit and cry. And Rebecca's like, please stay. Please stay. And Eileen is like, okay, I'll go to the bathroom. During this time, Rebecca is trying to make sandwiches with a rotten bread and insects flying around. Be prepared. If I had to read this, if I had to go through this, you're going to have to go through this as well. You're going to have to do this as well. And I'm so sorry for this video being so messy. I'm so sorry. It's my first one. The long form like this. Okay, it's the first one. She goes to the bathroom. There's only one working bathroom upstairs. So, it was moldy, disgusting, filthy, basically, filthy. A tube of lipstick was perched under the greasy mirror. I opened it, bright pink, nearly finished. Fresh-colored stocking hung from the shower curtain rod. I'll power through this. A bar of soap bore tiny curled hairs, dried to its chalky surface. These must be Rebecca's pubic hairs, I thought to myself. I took it and rubbed it on my face, splashed away the suds, and felt a little better. And my comment was the way I gasped. She's so nasty, my God. She's driving me insane. I dried my hands on a rag, then took out the gun. The smooth feel of the wood and metal soothed me. I pointed at my reflection in the mirror, held it against my face, cool and hard. I could smell my father on the gun, not the acrid madness of gin he exuded then. Why would she do this? Why would she do this? Tessa, why would you do this to me? Why would you do this to me? And I'm so sorry, y'all. I'm so sorry to say this. But those weren't even Rebecca's pubes. I'm hoping that it's armpit hair. I'm hoping that it's armpit hair. Like, it's gonna take me a long, long time to forget this scene. Like, it's gonna take me so long to forget this scene. So damn long to forget it. But it's not even Rebecca's. After eating the sandwich, Eileen, she couldn't even eat the sandwich. Like, how dare she say that the sandwich is disgusting when she did that in the bathroom? But whatever. Yeah. Makes me want to gag anytime I think about it. She's trying to leave because she's like, oh, Rebecca's acting weird. She's scaring me. But Rebecca is like, no, please stay, Eileen. And at one point, I have to read from this. 1 second. She's like, may I confide in you? She asks. And of course, this makes Eileen feel special. She's like, no one has ever confided in me before. No one has ever done this for me before. And then Rebecca, she's like, it's about Lee Polk. The dude, the 14-year-old dude that doesn't talk, okay? And of course, Eileen being dumb, she's like, oh my gosh, she's in love with him. Rebecca is like, sorry, he spoke to me. Still, there was a kind of perverse look of pride and pleasure on her face. I was reminded of Joni's self-satisfaction when she told me so many years ago at one point, he likes to taste me. Disgusting, whatever. Rebecca squeezed my fingers, swallowed hard. He told me everything. This is where the culmination of the story, okay? What happened and what he did and how he ended up in Moorhead. Look at this. So she pulls out a photograph of Lee Polk's father laying on the bed with his throat slit open. That's the father, Rebecca went on. People always think it's Oedipial. I probably didn't pronounce that right, but whatever. Killed the father, married the mother. That's what I'd assumed. And then Eileen just says gross, but she can't keep her eyes away from the damn photo. It is revealed, I'm gonna have to tell you this, it is revealed that Lee's father was raping him. He had been raping his son for 4 years now. I believe from the age of 9. It kills me to even say this out loud. But Rebecca is like, but that's not where the story ends. It is, as she says, the real mystery. There's no lovely way to say this, Eileen. It broke my heart to hear the boy tell his story. But as you know it's so important to let the truth out. Lee told me that each evening after dinner, his mother would take him upstairs to give him an enema before bedtime. Then she just sat around watching the honeymooners or painting her nails or sleeping or whatnot until they were done. Why didn't she stop him? The answer is quite plainly that she didn't want to. She must have been benefiting from it all somehow. I just don't understand how. Now, you're wondering, where are they now? And Rebecca reveals that this is not her house. It's actually Lee's house, Lee Polk's house. This is where his mother lives currently. Rita. Her name is Rita. And Rebecca is like, I don't understand Rita's intention. I don't understand what she was trying to do with that enema. I don't understand her. And Eileen is like, she's like, I don't want to get involved with this. I don't want to, not actually telling Rebecca that she doesn't want to get involved. But in her head, she's still trying to figure out a way to get out of here. And whatever, they're trying to come up with theories like, oh, the father wasn't threatening Rita. The father wasn't threatening Lee. And Rebecca continues. Rebecca gets obsessive with Polk's case. She doesn't let it go. She cannot let it go. She says, I believe something crucial must be resolved with that woman, Rebecca continued, before Lee can really move on. And like I said, I don't believe in punishment, but I do believe in retribution. Lee's father raped him. He did a bad thing, so he got killed. Lee killed his father, so he's in prison. The mother is guilty of her own crime, and she hasn't suffered any consequences. And Eileen, she leaned forward, grabbed me by the calf. You can't tell anyone about this, you promise? I nodded. Rebecca's hand on my leg was enough for me to promise her the world. Damn, Eileen. I still couldn't understand her earnestness, her grave intensity about the Polks. Why did it matter? Why did she care? When she stuck out her slender pinky finger, I hooked mine around it. We shook. This gesture felt so heartfelt, so pure, and yet so perverse. My eyes filled with tears. This isn't my house, Eileen, Rebecca said then. It's the Polk house. I have Rita Polk tied up downstairs. Now, to summarize it, because there's around 50 pages left. Rebecca wants a confession out of Rita. She wants Rita to confess what really happened. She wants Rita to come out with everything, go to the police so the police can solve this whole situation. Okay, if Rebecca, you wanted to give justice to Lee Polk, because no, this isn't about justice. This is about your ego. This is only about your freaking ego. Why didn't you go to the police from the get-go? Why didn't you go to the police, tell them about your suspicions? Why didn't you collect the evidence? Why didn't you tell the police immediately after Lee confessed about everything that had happened to him? Why didn't you do that, Rebecca? But no, you had to find another crazy bitch, like just like yourself, to do this whole thing. And this whole time, Rebecca wears freaking Rita's old shower gown, which is nasty and disgusting as this whole thing is happening. On page 229, this is when I side with Eileen. I think she perfectly, now in this section right here, you understand the purpose of Rebecca's character. I'll start. Page 229 if you want to follow. I've debated with myself time and again the earnestness of her compassion. Just what was her motivation for getting involved in the Polk family drama? Did she honestly think she had the power to atone for someone else's sins? That she could exact justice with her wit? Her superior thinking? People born of privilege are sometimes thus confused. But now she was frightened. Mrs. Polk was perhaps more evil than Rebecca had counted on. So they go downstairs, because of course Eileen follows Rebecca. She does everything that Rebecca asks her to do. They go downstairs and they try to coerce and threaten Rita, so Lee Polk's mother, to confess, to tell them what actually happened, to tell them the truth. And at first, because they're only two like skinny women, what can they do? And Polk's mother is described as like this, in Ottessa's words, a fat woman who barely moves and is nasty and she doesn't take care of herself. So I go downstairs, try to threaten her, and at one point, Eileen puts on like a scarf around her face to hide herself because Rita saw Eileen on the day where like she arranged the meeting, and Rebecca is like, Eileen, you need to help me get a confession out of her. But it's only the two of them, and of course, a woman is not gonna be scared of two skinny women. And Eileen is like, hey, I have a gun. We could threaten her with my gun. We'd get a confession out of her with my gun. And Rebecca's like, oh my God, perfect timing. Because before Eileen even like thinks of pulling out the gun, she's like, let's get her drunk and let's make her confess, or just let her down there for a very long time and she confesses. But Eileen is like, let's just use my gun. All in all, Rebecca is just there to play this rich character who's bored with her life. She's too privileged. She has nothing better to do with her life. And because she can do whatever she wants, whenever she wants, she chose to go to a town where it's like the middle of nowhere. By the way, Ottessa doesn't even explain why Rebecca came specifically to this town. And she tries to bring justice. She tries to bring justice to Exville. Because what else are rich people gonna do? Play the hero. Whatever. Now on page 240, while Eileen is pointing a gun at Rita, she finally says, okay, I'll confess. And Rebecca is like, let me go upstairs, get a pen and a paper so I can write everything down, and also make her write everything down and then sign it. But it's so stupid because it's like they tell her, you're going to write everything, we're going to call the police, and you're going to confess. But you literally tied a woman down in a basement. Whatever. And I need to add a trigger warning for this. She's right, Mrs. Polk begin. That lady. So right now in this scene, Eileen and Mrs. Polk are together, while Rebecca is up getting the pen and paper. That lady, your friend, her voice was high and monotonous and clicked with the film as she spoke. My boy wasn't lying about his father. Mitch, my husband, he had his bad habits, Strange tastes. I thought some men were just like that. I never got used to it, but you have to understand, I couldn't just leave. You take an oath when you get married to honor and obey your husband. I hated how religion has just twisted women's brains and has made them believe that as long as you do everything for your husband, he'll be loyal and committed to only you. No, that's a lie. That's what I did. Where was I supposed to go? Her eyes glittered in the weak light. She swallowed, looked up at the ceiling, and cleared her throat. Where was Rebecca? At first, I thought Mitch was just checking on him in his sleep, like a good father would, Mrs. Book went on. Like he just wanted to be sure his son was safe and sound in bed. We all do that, but he'd spend a while, bit by bit, longer each time, I guess. I don't know how often. Sometimes I'd feel him getting out of bed. Sometimes I'd just feel him when he'd come back and he'd kiss me or hold me. And we hadn't really been together since he'd been born. I'd lost interest, but suddenly Mitch wanted to be with me again. I was flattered, but I started getting these infections down there. Oh God, she sighed. In my private parts. The doctor said I had to wash more. I figured it was my fault. And then I wondered if Mitch had brought something home from a trip he took one summer to visit his brother in Toronto, or he said the clap. The clap is mentioned a lot in Peaky Blinders as well. Chlamydia. I don't know, I think it's chlamydia or some sort of STD, whatever. I don't know what I was thinking, but I kept getting these infections. Then one night I got up in the middle of the night and went and looked, and I saw Mitch and Lee's bed. At first I had no clue what they were doing. Really? Really? And I just went back to bed. It didn't dawn on me right away, I swear to you. You don't expect your husband's going to do a thing like that. It's a hard thing to believe, but as time went on, I came to accept it. It couldn't have hurt that much, I said to myself. Couldn't be that bad, I thought. And Lee never said anything, so I figured it was okay. Maybe I'd been confused all along about men, I thought. Maybe all men do this with their sons. And she goes on to say how Lee's such a great kid. He gets good grades. He makes sure to make his parents happy. And then an idea came into her head. Then I figured if he was clean, it would be better for all of us. Maybe I wouldn't get those infections. They hurt, when Mitch and I were together. Lee wasn't a big eater anyway, and I got to know what foods ran through him, which ways, she said. To make the enemas easier, it sounds funny, I know. I knew what I was doing wasn't quite right, but Lee was such a sweet kid, brave, He didn't question it. He always just wanted to make everybody happy, he'd say. I just don't want anybody to be mad at me. Made me all kinds of pretty cards at school for Christmas and Valentine's. Good boy back then, I thought. So I put on a happy face. What could I do? They don't tell you about these things. They don't prepare you for problems like these. Literally the most heartbreaking thing that I've read in my life. It was hard reading this scene. This is why I said I wrote it and multiple times throughout this book. It's a big trigger warning. And as you can tell, the ending, Eileen does leave town, and I'll explain it. So, as they're trying to get a confession out of Rita, she starts yelling. She starts getting angry. And she's like, no, I'm not going to confess. I'm not going to admit to anything. I'm not going to go to jail. Unfortunately, Pogue does not have good parents. I think the only good thing that came out of this, out of this whole book, the only good thing that came out of it was Lee murdering his father. That was the only good thing. I don't care about anything else or anyone else. As they're trying to make Rita confess, Rebecca grabs a gun from Eileen, and because she doesn't know how to use a gun, of course, she shoots, but she hits Rita's arms. I don't know which arm, but she hits Rita's arm. And the way that they explain it is that Rita is so fat that the blood does nothing for her, because the blood doesn't even gush out for a very long time. So now they make a plan that all Eileen's plan. This is all her idea. To take the body of Rita, send it to her house, put Rita's body in Eileen's basement, put the gun in her father's hand, and then blame everything on her father. Yeah, that was the idea. So they grab Rita's body, they put it on Eileen's car, and Rebecca is like, I'm gonna clean up the house so they can't link anything to us, and then we'll meet again. They plan on leaving town together. We all know that's not how it's gonna go. Eileen goes to her house. She does not put the body in. She does not put the body in the basement. No. Rita's body is on the passenger seat. Eileen goes and takes some stuff, her money, some clothes, and as she prepares her escape, this is what she reminisces on. on page 253. Here's how this was what was going on through her head as she was telling this story to us. Here's how I spend my days now. So in the present, I live in a beautiful place. I sleep in a beautiful bed. I eat beautiful food. I go for walks through beautiful places. I care for people deeply. And my bed is full of love because I live alone. Because at night my bed is full of love because I alone am in it. When I got alone to New York late on Christmas Day, I was sobered and hungry, and my body was cramped and my face was swollen. I walked around Times Square all evening and went to a dirty movie because I was cold and too nervous to check into a hotel, worried that the police were after me. I was scared to speak to anyone, scared to breathe. That's where I met my first husband in the back row of that movie theater. So you see, what came after this story ends was not a direct line to paradise. But I believe I got on the right road with all the appropriate trips and kinks. That was it. There was no grand finale. He was my father, and that is all he was to me. I could have sat and waited for hours for Rebecca to show up, but there was no point. I knew she was not coming. I knew she was long gone. In the end, she was a coward. Idealism without consequences is the pathetic dream of every spoiled brat, I suppose. If Rebecca is a rich spoiled brat, then what are you, Eileen? Because you're not any better, I promise you. You're not any better. I'm taking it personally now. And then on page 256, she says, I don't know what went wrong with in my family. We weren't terrible people. No worse than any of you, please. I suppose this is the luck of the draw. Where we end up, what happens? No, that's not true. I shut that front door forever. Then, as though God himself at will did, as I turned to face the yard, one of those... I forgot to mention it. Because in the place where she lives, it's always really cold. It's always cold, and right above her door entrance, there are these long icicles. And throughout the whole book, she's like, oh, I want one of them to drop and kill me. I want one of them to drop and kill my husband, my father. And at one point when, remember the scene where like the policeman comes and gives Eileen the right to the gun? When he's standing there, she was like, what if one of those icicles drops and murders him? Well, she always fantasized about that. Always. She always fantasized about those icicles dropping and killing her or some other person. Then, as though God himself had willed it, as I turned to face the yard, one of those icicles cracked and struck me on the cheek, slicing like a thin blade from my eye to my jaw. It didn't hurt, it just stung a little. I felt the blood well up and the cold creep into the wound like a ghost. Men would later say that the scar gave me character. One said that the line down my face was like an empty grave. Another called it the trail of tears. To me, it is simply the mark of having been someone else once. That girl, Eileen, the one who got away. More like the crazy psycho. The crazy psycho. All this time, as she's driving out of Exville, because she had a plan to like leave the car up on an abandoned train track, I believe, walk up to the main station and then go to New York. It all changes. She doesn't do that. She instead, with freaking Rita's corpse at this point, Rita doesn't die yet. She's still breathing, still alive, but she dies from hypothermia. That's what Rita dies from. But as it turned out, on my way out of Exville, I had no regrets, and I was not alone. Rita Polk sat limp beside me in the Dodge, almost reverent in her complete silence. Her hands, wide blue with cold, fell onto the seat between us as I took a turn. I picked them up and placed them gently in her lap. Mrs. Polk was sound asleep when I left her in the car, still running by the side of the road. There was enough gas left in the tank for her to run for hours. I hope she opened her eyes to appreciate what had left her. I think, in my opinion, Rita dies of hypothermia. We're not given an answer, but with the way that her body is described as blue and with a gunshot wound, I think she could have just died from hypothermia. And at one point, before Eileen completely disappears from this town, I said goodbye to the Dodge as I walked towards the deer. Frozen still, breath steaming from its nostrils and hanging in the air between us like so many ghosts. I raised my hand as though to greet it. It just stood there. Big black eyes fixed on mine, startled but kind, face tinged with frost, antlers floating above its head like a crown. I remember that how I crumbled before the animal, its body quaking and heavy and huge. Tears finally filled my eyes. I opened my mouth to speak to it, but it trotted off down the embankment and into the woods. That was it. I googled it, and it signified that deers represent the sort of enlightenment, and they symbolize the meaning of a new journey, which is fine. Eileen is a new person. Oh, she's a city girl, whatever. And the story basically ends with the deer is a symbol of her gaining a new identity, gaining a new life, and becoming a new person. But at this point, after all that she's done, after all that she's been through, it's like, I don't want her to die. As I said in the beginning, I don't think suicide would have suited this character. But it's very messy. So she walks a few miles ahead. A car stops for her. It's a man, of course. The story starts with her talking about men, and it ends with her talking about men. He lets her get on his car, and he drives ahead. And this is how she gets out of Massachusetts. I sank into the passenger seat and drank alcohol, of course, and looked out of the fogged up window. I watched that old world go by, away and away, gone, 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 until, like me, it disappeared. I've personally said enough. I think I've said more than enough about Eileen. My only problem, there's only one problem. Literally, the Times, before I get to the problem, I loved what the Times said about it. A taut psychological thriller, rippled with comedy as black as a raven's wing. I love that. But honestly, it feels kind of nasty bringing ravens into this, because at least ravens are beautiful, while Eileen is disgusting. My problem is that nowhere in this book, nowhere, there's no trigger warning. We get a small freaking blurb of absolutely nothing. Nothing that's connected to the story, in my opinion. Sure, that she's trying to get out of Xville and she meets Rebecca. Yes. Those two, yes. An alcoholic father. A job at a secretariat at the boys' prison. That she hates her father. This is what we get. Okay. But there is no trigger warning about pedophilia, about rape, about minors, about self-harm, about eating disorders. Absolutely no trigger warnings whatsoever. And if you go on Goodreads, no trigger warning whatsoever. If you go on Wikipedia, of course, you'll get everything. You'll get every spoiler possible. And if you look at like the reviews of what's going on, there's going to be people talking about how she's a self-deprecating character, but that's it. I do truly believe this book should have came with a big trigger warning. Somewhere in the beginning of this book, they should have added all the trigger warnings possible. That's all I have to say as a finish. I'm tired. I'm probably never going to read a book like Eileen again. And I'm so sorry that you had to watch this. It might be a fun first book of this sort of genre. But it wasn't bad either, because I finished it in 3 days. The ending shocked me. I didn't expect that, honestly. But yeah, I don't know. It bothered me. Again, trigger warnings. A lot of them. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you that you stayed until the very end. And good night, and see you next time. Bye.